Welcome to the Magical Salon, where two regular people, Amanda and James, explore mystical ideas and big questions. From books to pop culture, if it's a doorway to something deeper, we're probably into it. We're not experts, and maybe you aren't either, but that's kind of the point. And we're live. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Magical Salon. I'm Amanda, your podcast producer and patroness, and I'm here with my co-host and husband extraordinaire. Would you like to introduce yourselves to the people of the internet ether?
Sure, my patroness, my resident patroness. I'm James. I consider myself the resident alchemist, I guess. I am a lifelong reader. I'm a wanderer of inner worlds, if you will. I always liked books, especially video games, films, music. These are kind of my portals, if you will. And they've taken me across time, through different books and movies that are throughout history, made up realities, and they just have brought up a lot of deep questions about consciousness, magic, which is, in the name of the pod here, and meaning. So I think this is I'm looking at this as a way of continuing that journey of learning, and we're inviting you, the listeners, to walk it with us.
In the internet age, we can invite literally everyone and anyone on the planet to walk alongside us. I like what you said as well about basically something about meaning making. You're focused on finding meaning and making meaning from things, because I feel like that's sort of what our podcast is most focused on, right? As tied to spirituality.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because magic is kind of it's a little bit of a loaded word. That's fantastical. It's a bit unreal, fantasy, right? Dragons, Lord of the Rings. Those are kind of magic when you think of it in the modern world.
You think fantasy?
Yeah, you've kind of lost the thought of real world magic. So what do you think real world magic looks like?
I mean, I guess you could tie it back to meaning making, seeing connections. In my magic journal, okay, here, I actually riffed on magic, so I can read it to you.
I'll just wait for that. 1 second, just a brief intermission. Beep, beep, beep. Okay.
Magic is real, not like in the cartoons or in the books, but in connection itself. Once you begin to see, the silver threads of life itself are visible. I feel very connected. I feel joyful. You can shape the world. You don't just have to be shaped by it. I am energy itself. Energy is all around me. I am a practitioner of the world. Organized religion states this is the hand you've been dealt. That's something higher than you dealt you. Accept it. Magic says this is the hand you've been dealt, but you can change it. I remember you used to talk about how you would build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck when you were a kid, and how you were very focused on building a better deck. And I liked that metaphor because I feel like magic helps you build the deck. It gives you agency while organized religion strips you of it.
Yeah. That's a lot there that you hit on. Well, no, it's good though, right? There's a lot there that resonates. And I think that one of the things you said specifically that I thought kind of hit, you're a practitioner. And that's what I think. We're not experts, right? And I mean, I've been going to Qigong. And in this book, in a lot of these books, they talk about how student, master, teacher, novice, whatever. But at the end of the day, everybody is just a human, just trying to make sense of the world. You might look to somebody as an expert because you admire that particular way that they're doing it. But we're just kind of looking at the different ways that people are practicing how to make meaning in their lives, ways that they're finding meaning, methods they're doing, and then kind of are there commonalities? You mentioned the thread as well, which that was what I also wanted to hit on, the thread. But specifically, and I think this is a core thing that we'll probably touch on multiple times throughout this podcast, the Magical Salon, the wheel, which that's your concept, but you just reading this and talking about it with you brought that up to my mind of your talk of the wheel. So do you want to introduce the wheels or your take on it?
Okay, so I will say, I have to caveat it because I can't say I invented the wheel, because the wheel is an ancient thing. It's a symbol of cycles, of beginnings and ends, and is important in many different spiritual cultures, or spiritualities across cultures, I guess I should say. And then of course the wheel is also a symbol of human advancement, right? Because once you got the wheel, then that's human industry, etc. So it's kind of important psychically But the idea of the wheel that I kind of had is somewhat connected to the idea of the wheel in Hinduism, which states that basically, or at least this is what I interpreted from it, which is that all religions are sort of access points to God, to the one, like the one true thing, which is God. And so you can think about all those different pathways, all those different religions as spokes on a wheel. And so I took that concept and broadened it to just basically what helped tap in with something bigger and greater than yourself, which is basically transcending. So there's like multiple access points.
You didn't literally invent it or anything. It's more just a way that we're going to frame things. But the wheel and the Tao Te Ching, you know, that's a book that you introduced me to, the Tao Te Ching, and they talk about the usefulness, and a room comes from its emptiness. A doorway is its emptiness. A window going, like, the doors and windows are portals, right? Because of their emptiness. It's an opening through something. And I don't know, God is kind of a loaded term. It sounds very religious, but the all, the one, Brahman, all these different religions, the absolute, infinite, whatever people call it, right? That's what we're kind of talking about, the portals to kind of understanding it or getting there, for lack of a better word. Because I think, you know, growing up Catholic as we did, heaven is not a tangible thing that you can get to, right? I mean, it's a place after death, literally.
Yeah, we should probably back up. So, in your opinion, like, what are some like formative moments for you in terms of like your spiritual journey? Like, why do this podcast? Like, what has led you here, kind of? Like, what are those big moments for you?
Personally, for the listeners, I guess this is some background on how we got here, or the POV of the speakers. Your host. But yeah, growing up Catholic, there was a lot of stuff. It's a lot of guilt, original sin, man is born guilty, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think it, more than anything, it's just kind of a framework that your view, it's a lens, right? A perspective that's kind of filtered over how you view the world and yourself in the world. And I don't know if I agree with that outlook per se. I get how it works for some people. Doesn't work exactly for me. So that's when I kind of started getting curious of what other things were out there. And you took a class in college, Eastern philosophy, and you read the Tao Te Ching in that and said you thought I would like it. And then it obviously resonated with me, and I enjoyed it a lot. And, you know, the journey's been ongoing since. Decades later, still on the pursuit. But hey, we're in the ride together. The listeners are joining.
Oh, well, here you like this. It's a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert.
Your favorite.
If you're not moving toward it, you're moving away from it. So that's specifically in relationship to creative projects, but I would say and describe Liz Gilbert as like a spiritual person. And so I think it's relevant. You kind of got to be working on it, right? It's the practice, right?
Yeah.
But I also like that emphasis because at least when I was like in terms of Catholicism, it was like always like scheduled times to be with God. It was like you were in mass every Sunday, then you had class before that, then you had, you know, JYM, like to become confirmed. Then it was like there were, and yes, you were supposed to pray on your own, but like, in some ways that wasn't even that encouraged. I guess it seemed to me somewhat, at least from our church and the way it was presented to me, like somewhat disconnected from like a personal journey. I think it's a bit different for some other people because like there's people that go to church every morning before work and stuff, and that's kind of part of, you know, having a ritual and having a practice, right?
Which again is going back to magic, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think going to the practice part and magic in general, the journey, part of the idea of the podcast and why I started is for the community aspect. If you, what's the phrase? If you build it, they will come. You can find like-minded people. You can also just talk about things in a bit more abstract and kind of deeper way, right? Because you and I are able to kind of step away, think about a certain topic maybe, and then come kind of give an audience how to regular people that are not the experts, right? But that doesn't mean we don't know things or we're not trying and learning. It's more just we can be experimenters, we're practitioners, we're trying different things, if you will, sampling or sharing things that work for us, that help us feel better, get closer to the one, or access it, or transcend.
I think the problem with being an expert is you have to decide specifically what you're going to go into. Oh, I'm really interested in esoteric studies. I'm really interested in like learning about the Torah. But for me, I don't want to call myself like a dilettante or like a dabbler, but I also kind of like that phrase because it keeps this element of play, right? Oh, I'm just gonna kind of like immerse myself in that, kind of soak up what I need from it, and then go on to the next thing that I feel kind of somewhat called to like learn about, and then just like go from there. So I guess the other important thing is, at least for me, I'm very much so on the journey still. Some of my opinions are like not quite formulated yet, or will probably change. To having an open mind is also important if you want to have like an actual authentic practice.
So I guess what we're kind of getting at for a listener, our POV is we're not coming from a purely dogmatic or traditional, this is our one true belief. We're not really able to say this is our magical salon from a Baptist perspective. Like, you know, when you hear those kind of things.
Imagine a Baptist
I just mean
production of the Magical Salon.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? It's just, you know, there's a lot of podcasts or things out there where it's like human history from the Christian perspective or whatever. You know, there's Christian Mingle, there's Farmer Meetup, like there's all these weird internet places, which is kind of what we're getting at with the whole internet is anything. So
why not this?
Exactly. I guess what are the values that we're looking for, right, to transcend? It's when you feel just happy, enlightened. Usually for me, it's nature or nature adjacent or hanging out with loved ones when you're just kind of out of time, for lack of a better word. You're not worrying about your job. You're not worrying about an assignment if you're in school or something. You're just kind of enjoying the moment. You're losing yourself in the moment. That's kind of when you can kind of transcend. So that's why I think in modern culture, it's a lot of books. Entertainment things are a way for people to transcend, I think. At least for me. What about you? What about your ways of transcending?
So there's definitely a difference for me between transcending and like contentness. Content, like you can be content, i.e. like, I feel pretty good. Like, I almost maybe even feel like a little bit happy. Like I'm enjoying myself, right? But that's not transcending, right? Necessarily, not for me. However, that feeling is present when I do transcend. It's just not mutually exclusive to that. I feel like for me, transcending is when I'm sort of like out of my body. It's kind of almost like I can feel my body like being like something being, this is gonna sound crazy, but like my body being like sucked up sort of like through my head, like through the crown chakra, almost like I'm trying to kind of like, there's like an upward motion to it, I guess is what I'm saying. And I can feel the upward motion rising to the surface, sort of.
So when you describe then transcending, are you looking for this all the time? Is it escapism? Are you going to your astral realm? There's a lot of thoughts on all of this stuff, right? I'm not asking you specifically, I'm just saying in general, but you know, you're mentioning a rising sensation. So joy, elation, are you feeling your muscles? There's a lot there to unpack.
It's a state of not being.
Which that definitely comes up a lot in a lot of religious literature, I guess. Even like Wu Wei in the Tao Te Ching, Mu Xin, I think, is a state of no mind, being and non-being. Yeah, this is a very consistent theme with a lot of religious books, right? Which I think is why we're talking about the Magical Salon. In some ways, we kind of view, and this is where we get a little bit heretical, perhaps. Magic and religion, in my mind, are kind of two sides of the same coin. You're talking about utilizing supernatural, for lack of a better word, which magic is magical powers. Religion, God has powers. He can make or manifest anything. It's God, it's infinite. From him, all things are made. Without God, there's nothing, right? But magic is kind of the ether, the substance of the universe. And maybe you can shape your own future. You're built in the image of God. Why can't you shape your own future? And we have free will, and there's a lot of myth of gods in all these different civilizations, right?
So you do or you do not believe in magic in the present day?
I'm saying I believe in it in the sense of I think there's something more than what we are told. There's more beyond just the purely material reality that that's all our society is focused on.
I think ultimately, I don't know what magic can and can't do, and I have no problem with like fessing up to that. But I think the idea of magic is sort of like a paradigm shift and a spiritual shift, I guess, because it's reaffirming. You're regaining control over your life, because there's always, of course, the big narrative is like fate, or God has a plan for everyone and everybody's path is already set for them and they're just like walking it completely oblivious. Everything's completely out of their control. Whereas like magic is, hey, like you can change things. It is shitty now, but you can change your circumstances. And even if, like, let's just say that isn't even true, right? It's still a complete alternate way of looking at the universe and at looking at your own life. And it reminds me sort of that saying from that lady at work: life happens for you, not to you. And that's an inherently, like, it's a half full, half empty glass situation.
We're just kind of splitting hairs, but I mean, we're kind of talking about the idea of the magical salon. But in my opinion, magic in the real world is it's self-empowerment, which is kind of what you're talking about. It's helping you shape your will to achieve what you want in this reality. And I think that's what a lot of people use religion for, is it gives them kind of a guidebook of how to frame their life. And I think magic kind of has that for sure, but there's just different bits and pieces you can take without being strictly adhering to any one in particular. They're all touching on certain aspects that do make you live a better life, a happier, healthier life. They all talk about the same things. But when I say they, I'm being very overgeneral, but and in the modern world, I think religion is very, to your point, it's predetermined, but in a more practical sense, which I think going to the whole meaning aspect, which I think a lot of people are grappling with, ourselves included. What is the meaning of all this? You kind of feel, from a religious perspective, that point of mind is, well, you can't do anything. Like, you're not God, and I guess say a prayer, but nothing is going to change, right? You don't really have power to change your circumstances. And I think magic kind of flips that on its head a little bit and says there's a little bit of God in you, and you can change your circumstances, right? And I think that's kind of what magic is, a bit more empowering. Rather, you're a piece of the all. You are part of Brahman, or a higher power, but we're all in it together, and we're all just trying to get by as best as we can.
I like that. There's a little piece of God in all of us. Yeah. It's like the light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste. I mean, to kind of riff on that, God can create and perform miracles, right? But when people pray for a miracle, like for their loved one or like whatever situation they might find themselves in, it's like, God, please perform this miracle for me. Whether it's you're begging or you're honoring or whatever the situation is, you're relying on God, right? You're asking for help. But it's like, what if you could do that, right? But it's still, you're asking for help, right? But in a different way. You're like a channel at that point.
Yeah, you're getting help from a higher power. But yeah, that's interesting. Kind of like Avatar state. We're making a lot of weird references, I think. But we could have episodes on these different things to kind of delve into the magical. Obviously, like Avatar, The Last Airbender is what I was referring to, not the movie with blue people by James Cameron or whatever his name was. But anyways, movies and TV shows, those can be very formative, right? I mean, The Avatar is a very famous show. There's a lot of people that love that show, and it introduced a lot of the Western world as kids growing up to Eastern thought.
Yeah, well, it's interesting though, because I watched that show when I was a kid with my brother, and so I was literally exposed from a early age, not just to the principles of like Eastern. Like, there was a lot of Eastern thought and philosophy and spirituality integrated into the show and its worldview and even like its resolution and etc. But I introduced you to the show, I think. And so you watched it as an adult, which is interesting because I guess we encountered it at two different points, right? Like, because for me, I would definitely say that show is like a formative experience in my life, especially in terms of shows, and definitely is part of the spiritual journey.
I guess, just the theme of movies and film, music is another portal that people always talk about, right? And you and I love music. We can talk about various artists or songs or different genres or eras of music for things in the future, because these are all portals, right? And, we have a lot of thoughts on guests we could have or just kind of topics in future episodes. And it's not a magic from, a Crowleyan perspective, like you need to wear a hood and sacrifice goats, or I don't know what he does. That's probably, I'm probably over exaggerating what he did. But I'm just saying, we're looking for it in the little things too, right? The little snippets when you can see somebody else was in a God mindset. They were in creative flow, creating art, right? Which you can sometimes feel when you're seeing art or a movie that's moving you to tears, or a film, right? But thinking of what we were talking about, Avatar, Kung Fu Panda, right? That's another one, Western to Eastern, and that's with Jack Black. That's not that old, right? But, use that in my best man speech. So that's how I like that.
I think it is important to say what you said, which is that we're coming at magic from a place of love and positivity.
Right.
It's definitely like a do no harm sort of situation. And also, I don't know, I wonder if we should talk about, because like magic, just the idea that scares people, and I think did scare me at the beginning of my journey, but I've now since, got over that. I think because I was afraid of that negative association, either of other people projecting it onto me, or like I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be dabbling into this. What if like a demon shows up at the end of my bed, right? But it's like, if you're not searching for that, it's not going to be seeking you out, right? And what is it, like you attract what you seek or something like that?
Yeah, along those lines. Yeah, we're not trying to summon demons or do any of that stuff. We're talking about magic from the purely love and light. This is ways humans in a real practical sense can find enjoyment in little snippets of heaven on earth.
Yes, I definitely agree. And also I feel like the term supernatural, it kind of scares people, but it basically is just something beyond you, right? And at least what I kind of think about is when you walk into a place of worship, if I walk into a church, this isn't true for all churches, it kind of depends on the energy there, but it's true for a lot of churches. You walk inside and you feel kind of like the presence of the divine, or like it could be there in some alternate setting. Feel something kind of bigger than you. That's the supernatural, I guess.
The modern world is magic, right? Like if you had a phone, and forget about the logistics of it not working or anything, but if you put me in 1500 and I say I can tell you anything in the world right now, that would be, I'm a magician. It's an iPad though, is what I'm saying. Like we are magic, like all of the stuff in the modern world, air conditioning.
But that's kind of getting away from it.
Is it though? Like I'm saying magic, what's supernatural today is commonplace tomorrow. In my opinion, everything in the modern world is magic. People dreamt of, man, it'd be cool if I could have instant hot water. I didn't have to go get logs, chop them, and then heat up a bin of water over fire. And now, and even a water heater, it's like you have instant hot water heaters. You don't have a gallon sitting, like a tub sitting in a room somewhere. So we are capable of creating what we envision as humans.
No, I think that's an interesting point because I was going to add that for me personally, one of the portals that I'm most focused on is creativity through my writing. But I've always kind of thought that, similar to you, when you read a good book and you feel like you can kind of transcend through it, but then it's also interesting just to kind of think about, sometimes you read a book, you feel like you know something fundamental about the author because they wrote the book in a certain way. Kind of like, oh, you think a certain way, or like, oh, maybe they're like kind of enlightened, or they're channeling from somewhere beyond them at a very base level. And that's true, obviously. It's true for anyone that creates great art, because it's like, where did that come from? But I feel like that's also true for inventions in terms of what you were saying, modern marvels. It's like, how do you create electricity? Yes, you fiddle around, but what's that quote about Thomas Edison trying to make a light bulb and it took him like 10,000 tries or something? That's magic too, right? That's your channeling, because somehow you're kind of getting the answer. And it's not to discount the individual perseverance or diligence, but you are kind of just like a channel, basically.
Creativity, I think, is a big one for the podcast too. From a why do we do this and what is the magic to us, and kind of what you're saying. Some of these people do kind of, channeling sounds very woo woo, I'm a medium kind of a thing. But I'm thinking even of just, it's a portal so you can be in a higher consciousness. If you think of the map of consciousness, you could be a more enlightened you could be operating at a higher level where you're seeing things from a bigger picture, right? The same person could be living one single same day. One could have a great time and one could have a horrible time because they're looking at it differently, right? And I think that's kind of what magic is kind of doing. It helps give you a different set of glasses to look at the world. Like that They Live movie. You can put on these magic glasses and see that there are alien humanoids living among you, right? But only if you have these special glasses on. To everyone else in the world, they're just normal humans. You can't see through the filter. You can't see the illusion.
We're taking literally everything in, absorbing it, taking what we like, and then just basically making it into something new or making it into something that feels most authentic and real to us. In school, they kind of teach you to read this thing and tell me like exactly what this thing says. Tell me why this person wrote this and like what's their main argument, X, Y, and Z. But this is like an alternate way of reading it. It's like I just need to pull from it what I need.
But more so, what is the listener need, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So what's the important stuff, right? A lot of people don't have time to just sit under a tree for 10,000 years and come to nirvana. Or if you're the Buddha and you just abandon your wife and child and go live under a banyan tree.
Like how we've pissed off every major religion.
Well, hey, it's a magical salon.
Okay, so our weekly segment, Weekly Wisdom, wherein we will impart some weekly wisdom to ye, the listeners. Just something to kind of chew on.
Well, and I can hit them with the first weekly wisdom for the inaugural episode. The first weekly wisdom is from the Kung Fu Panda #1 movie, when Master Oogway, under the tree, says, "Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present." You know, that's weekly wisdom from a inauspicious place, right? Who's going to think a children's movie?
They often do.
But there you go.
Proving our point, which is we're searching for meaning in everything, like anyone else, really. Yeah, because ultimately we're not necessarily expecting everybody to agree with us on the minute details. It's mostly just, oh, hey, maybe create your own practice. Oh, hey, here, think about this thing you might not have thought about before.
Yeah, it's opening awareness.
Our main goal, I think, is to sort of be loving awareness, I guess, and try and model it in our day-to-day lives, which is really hard, obviously. So, you know, one of my other mantras at the moment is everything is peaceful love, which is from a Bonnie Bay song. Well, it is a Bonnie Bay song.
I don't know if that's how you say it.
It is, though. It's because it's like good winter, which is French. Bon hiver.
It's a band. We could talk about them later.
Justin Bannon. He definitely did mushrooms. Anyway.
And I think magic is kind of one of those ways you do things that you ordinarily wouldn't like doing, right? Like, wow, I just did all the laundry and whatever. Like, I was in a cleaning frenzy, you know? Yeah. Every now and then some weird thing happens when you're just taken up with it. And that's kind of how a lot of things get done in the world, I think, truthfully. A lot of inventions, that's how you hear about it, right? Obviously, it's a practice, so they're working at it a lot. They don't just sit in a random scientific laboratory with every gadget they need because they didn't do any work. They're practicing at it all the time to get to that revelation when they crack the code or whatever and have a eureka moment in a movie.
Imagining someone working on creating an invention and just getting so mad, like pulling their hair out, then they're making progress and they're super excited, then they're depressed. That kind of does replicate in some ways the spiritual journey. It's like you have to kind of know that it will ebb and flow as well. You can't just like expect any one thing from it at any one time.
Yeah, and I mean the tarot, that's a magical or a bit more of a magical element, right? Because or there's cardology, there's astrology, there's a million ways of people making sense and meaning of the world that religions would call magical or pagan or whatever. Well, it doesn't mean it's wrong though, does it? Just because, and I think that's kind of where our mindset comes from growing up, a religion is very dogmatic. You're not being open and being open to all possibilities. We're drawing a little bit long, but you're the patroness. Do you have any specific thoughts?
I forgot to explain why we framed it as a magical salon. The idea of a salon, when I always heard it, people would just be like, oh, it's like a gathering of academics or, you know, interesting people that might have sort of alternative viewpoints or very niche expertises, and they would just gather to talk about big things, right? So it's basically just a gathering where you're talking about something that is after the big questions and is rooted in some sort of text, I would say, or in multiple texts. It's a place of learning, I would say, through casual conversation. So I think I like the idea of that as a framing for this podcast because it seems like kind of like a safe environment.
Yeah, it is open, and it's also, I think the salon is a bit more casual, for lack of a better word. It's not going to be scripted to the T. It's just sharing experiences or interviewing people and hearing their take on things that have worked for them, right? Personally, not what does a scientist with 10,000 bricks of data say. It's like, yeah, this one guy did something and it worked, and here's a story kind of a thing. Or I watched this movie and they talked about this.
Yeah, so I would say the Magical Salon is ultimately trying to cultivate a group of people who like to talk about similar things to what we like to talk about around magic and spirituality, etc., and transcending.
Our positive vibes incense has concluded its burning, and I think that's a good end. Well, you're the patroness. Sign us out. Patroness and producer. What, don't you have some rollout music?
Thanks for joining us on the Magical Salon. Join us for the next episode next week. Let the credits roll.
All right.
Do I press the button again?
Yeah.